going on, you guys? Bryce McKinley, Coach Sharpen. You know what time it is. Hey, in this video, I want to tell you all about the hiring process for an acquisition manager. I'm often asked, hey Bryce, you have amazing sales teams. How do you train your guys? What do you do, and what do you do differently than anybody else in this industry? And so in this video, I want to show you exactly what my team and I do to not just sharpen our team, but to get our team started from the minute they get hired to the time that they get on the phone. So with that said, by the end of this video, you're not only going to know the 4 weeks of training that we use, but exactly step by step how we use, what we teach, where we teach, and why the order we teach is important.
If you don't know Bryce, he's crushing it. He's doing over 50 wholesale deals a month.
So I'm often asked, Bryce, what, how, when, where, why do you teach what you teach when you do to your acquisition team? And you've probably thought the same thing if you're trying to build a team. Not only build a team, but scale your team out. Maybe you're sitting there with 1 or 2 acquisitions person and you want to go to 10, or maybe you've got 10 and you want to go to 20. You might even be just hiring that first acquisition person. So what does that training schedule look like? Well, for me, I need something that's very disciplined, rigid, and not only that, something that's cut black and white for the acquisition team, because our sales and acquisitions person are not that organized. They're just not. If you've hired the right sales and acquisition person, they're not going to be that organized and structured. So it's your responsibility to lay that structure out. So what does that look like? Well, we break it down into 4 simple weeks of continuous training. And then after that 4 weeks, we go into this evergreen mode of just role play, Q&A, and fine tune along the way. So let's break that down. Week 1. In week 1 of training, we actually break down every component of the acquisition position and do an overview. So for example, day 1, we're going to have any and all paperwork that's going to be filled out, whether that's onboarding paperwork, W-2, W-9, 1099, payroll information, and just kind of give a broad overview of what the roles and responsibilities look like. Day 2 of week 1, what we're going to do is then we're going to dive into something like the comps and what a comp is, when and where and how you do a comp. And if you're not familiar with what a comp is, this probably isn't the video for you. But just so that you know, a comp is a comparable, right? What are the comparables, and when and how and why do you run them? And then day 3, we talk about the conversation, the structure of the conversation, the 5 steps to the conversation that we teach, and then the script itself. And then on day 4, we talk about the paperwork, the CRM, when, where, why, what, how they're going to actually use the tools that they're going to learn in training. So week 1 is vitally important that you set the ground rules, not just for the expectations, but the boundaries. The boundaries are super important, and we're going to talk about that in another video. So keep in mind, week 1 of your training is all about setting the boundaries and overviewing everything from a 50,000 foot view. Why is that important, you might ask? Because sales and acquisitions persons, when they get overwhelmed and bombarded with information, they tend to shut down. And that's the reason in week 1, you want to give them just a little micro dose of what they're going to be learning over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks. Make sense? Great. We're going to now talk about week number 2. In week number 2, we're going to actually dig in really deep into the comps, so the comparables. Why, you might be asking? Because there's 2 things in the acquisitions person's role that they absolutely need to know. Number 1, they need to know their numbers. Number 2, they need to know and master the conversation. So what's most important right up front before they master the conversation, and why? That's the comps. The why is because they're going to ever be learning the conversation. The conversations are going to change as they grow into this position. And so first and foremost, they have to master the numbers. So that way, when they start having better conversations, the numbers are always the numbers. And if they know how to run them up front and master them first, adding them to the conversation is so much easier. And so for us, as we train our acquisitions person, week number 2 is a deep dive into the comparables. what we run, how we run, why we run, what the numbers look like. What is that mathematical equation that not only gives you the ARV or the after repair value, or like we like to say, the actual resale value, but taking that number, compounding it into the multiplication table, minusing the rehab, and giving you that MAO, that maximum allowable offer, right? And then from there, if they've mastered that series of numbers and that equation and how they come to that conclusion, then and only then can you start working on that conversation. So what does that look like? Well, you see, in week 2, not only do we teach them the mastery of those numbers, but we give them homework. Every single day, we're gonna give our acquisitions person 3 to 5 addresses, have them go and run the numbers on their own, have them practice stumble and fall, and bring them back to you the next day during your training, so that way you can run them with them. Ask them questions like, how did you come up with this number? Ah, that makes sense. Did you try this, this, and this, right? And that way, as they're learning this process and they're actually doing it, you can not only show them what they did wrong, but how they can find a better number to compensate for the numbers that make better sense. Week number 3. This is my favorite, and it may be yours as well. As a leader of your organization, week number 3 is when you get to start not only having conversations, but teaching your acquisitions person the conversation. And this is where they start to get antsy. This is when they're like, I just want to get on the phone. I know how to run the numbers. Now I want to talk to people. Slow it down, set the expectation that this week, this is when it gets serious. This is when you not only know the numbers, but you hone in on that conversation, so that way you can start not only negotiating, but getting these properties at the absolute lowest amount. So what does that look like? Well, day 1, I overview the script that we're gonna use. The script that you're gonna use, you wanna overview that, so that way they understand what they're doing, but not only that, why and how they're doing it. Salespeople want to understand, like, what is it that I'm doing? Sure, but why is this important? Or what if we say it this way? Make sure you hold to your boundaries, stick to that expectation to trust the process, and break it down day by day. So day 1, we overview the script, what we say, how we say it, where we say, why we say, and all of those things, right? Day 2, day 3, and day 4 is really a deep dive in role playing, taking turns with you and your acquisition manager, or your acquisition managers amongst themselves, going in and role playing that conversation. Here's the key, and this is the golden nugget for you. Make sure that you role play with your acquisition person, not just to study objections and rebuttals, no, but role play with your acquisition person to a win. Role play with them and give them some easy layups, so that way they build the confidence that they can go through the conversation and get to the ask, set the appointment, ask for the email so they can send a contract. That's gonna be your key indicator that you've got a winner. When they can get from A to Z in the conversation without stumbling, then and only then do you even want to attempt to start practicing objections and rebuttals. Now you might be wondering why. Think about this for a second. If you were in a new position, how likely are you to win or succeed if all you did was study to fail? Let me say that again for the people in the back. If you were in a new position and you were studying, and boom, immediately you failed, meaning you got an objection that you didn't know what it was and you didn't know how to overcome it, you're gonna set your acquisition team up for failure. So stop role-playing objections and rebuttals until they've mastered the conversation to a win. Then and only then do you add in objection and rebuttal role-playing. Now, sure, they might wonder what some of the objections are that are gonna come up. Feel free to give it to them, but don't sit there and spend your time on honing in how to rebuttal the objection. If they master the conversation and the art of communication, they should have a lot less conversation objections and objections in that conversation. And if you need help with that, obviously you know where to go. So let's dig in to week number 4. Week number 4 is where you really start to mold everything together. Not only from week 1 in the overview, week 2 in the comps and running the numbers, week 3 in the conversation, but week 4 is where we take the conversation and the comps, we pull them together and show how they work and how they can work best in unison. And doing them together And then throw in the small stuff like the paperwork and then the CRM. Why? Because that stuff is ancillary. It's really not vitally important to the success of their business and yours. Why? Because they don't have to master that. They're gonna get better with a CRM and filling out paperwork. I mean, really, think about it. How difficult is filling out the paperwork? It's like fill in the name of the address and the blank and so on, right? The price and the close date. Not that difficult. So why would you spend much more time on it other than the mastery of the numbers and the conversation? So week 1 is your overview. Week 2 is really digging in with comps and assigning homework, critiquing and perfecting and knowing your numbers. Week 3 is digging into that conversation. And then week 4 is marrying that conversation with the comp so that way they can be ran together in unison. And then follow that up at the end of week 4 with a little bit of paperwork and CRM training if you have one. After that, you're off to the races. Continue to encourage your team to meet daily and sharpen that axe. Role play once or twice a day, ongoing, and you'll find yourself in a better position to have not only a better successful acquisition manager, but a better and successful acquisition team. Hey guys, Bryce McKinley here, Coach Sharpen. You know what time it is. I want to personally thank you for watching these videos. You see, you might want to subscribe to this channel, and I'm not just saying that to get more followers, but the knowledge that I drop, I guarantee you won't get anywhere else. You see, the information that I give is not just the fluff that every other guru, screw and guru talks about. You might want to stay alert for what's happening next. So, subscribe, hit the notification bell to keep you posted. You're not going to want to miss what I drop on this channel.
Every single